Hey everybody, I'm here with my friend Ben, and we just went and saw Cowboys and Aliens. So let's just start off. What were your initial reactions to this movie?
Going into it, I thought, wow, this is going to be like a really campy, kitschy kind of B movie, and it really wasn't at all. It took itself far more seriously.
Yeah, and that's why I'm not exactly sure like what to say about this movie. This is like the first movie I've seen all summer where I came out and I was like, I don't really know what to think about this.
Yeah, I was kind of surprised at the end how much I felt like I had one of those good, satisfied feelings. Like I was like, oh yeah, all right. It had a nice kind of like standard Western, ending. Throughout the whole movie, I was kind of going back and forth, like, man, I don't know, does that work? I don't think that works at all. And then it would be followed by something really great, and then it would go back to something that didn't work at all. But overall, it was just kind of fun. I just enjoyed it more or less,
Yeah, I mean it was a fun movie for sure. I would say that. I mean it lives up to the whole blockbuster idea of movies in the summer, where it's more of just like a thrill ride that you get on and then you get off and then you're kind of satisfied at the end. There was one thing that I was thinking about though, like right after we came out of the theater, and it was, I don't know if this movie had an arc.
Right.
Because normally like your main character in a movie like starts out at a low point or something like that, and then there's some kind of progression, and then there's an arc to the main character. And like there was no real arc to Daniel Craig's character.
Right, that's really true, because it starts out kind of like, it sets you up like you're going into kind of a noir situation, like it's like a noir blended into the Western genre. But he kind of goes through this process of self-discovery and discovers some things about himself maybe he shouldn't be too proud of, but he doesn't ever seem to really struggle with it.
No.
And it doesn't ever seem to be something that he feels like he needs to redeem. He just kind of does, just because he's the main character. Harrison Ford's character, you start out thinking, man, I'm really going to hate this guy, he's a real son of a bitch. And then by the end of the movie, you're like, oh, what a big old softie,
Yeah, so maybe Harrison Ford is more of like the main character of this movie, though. And Daniel Craig seemed to me more like just the weapon that you point at the bad guys.
Yeah, he was, for a main character, he functioned a lot more like just like a basic plot device that just like got you from point A to point B. He had a love interest, but it was like really shallow and not like very interestingly put together. And the love interest was kind of boring. Like he didn't really, care if they wound up together. And you're supposed to feel sad for him at the end, but really it's just, oh, okay. I saw that movie. It had cowboys in it and it had aliens in it, and that's all I was expecting. And so I'm happy. People are always like, why the fuck would you go spend money on that? And I'm always like, well, I really felt like sitting down for 2 hours and watching some cowboys and some aliens shoot at each other, and Harrison Ford scowl for 2 hours straight.
Let's talk a little bit about that then, maybe. Let's talk about Harrison Ford in this film, because to me, like, that's what really made me want to go see this, is because it had Harrison Ford in it. And through the whole movie, like, he's just this growly, gravelly voice type curmudgeon guy. But like you said, like he seems kind of like a jackass at the beginning, and then near the end, like it seems like he's the one who redeems himself, like, and becomes like a real person.
Well, I think that each of your main characters in the movie, you've got the bartender Doc, played by Sam Rockwell, and then you've got the little kid. You've got Harrison Ford's son, Paul Dano, whatever. So each character in the movie has kind of the significant other person that they're concerned about. And so I think that what happens for each character is they go through a transformation based on not knowing what's happened to that other person and what they really mean to that character. And the only character that doesn't really have that is Daniel Craig's character. He loses his wife, but you're never really sure, and he's never really sure what that relationship meant to him throughout the movie. He just knows that she was there somehow. But he doesn't seem altogether to be too sad, so it's kind of like at the end when he leaves kind of your standard Western loner situation where he, you know, kind of grasps at straws for an emotional attachment and finds himself with nothing. Where these other characters kind of come full circle, you know, like Sam Rockwell's character, like he's kind of a pussy, you know, at the beginning. He doesn't really stand up for himself, and then he learns how to shoot a gun, and he finally proves himself by capping an alien, and so
that part was kind of satisfying, actually.
Yeah.
Like you knew it was gonna happen from the one part where they were in that overturned boat, and the preacher was in there telling them how to shoot. Like you knew at some point, like, okay, this guy's gonna save somebody at the end by shooting. Like you knew that. But at the same time, it was still kind of satisfying when it happened.
But it had some really interesting connections in terms of like, you know, the Keith Carradine character who plays the sheriff, being from like Deadwood and Wild West Tech and stuff like that. And so it's well aware of those like genre. Like maybe we should talk a little bit about the genre aspect of it because it's really well aware of the genre, the established genre.
Of both genres.
Of both genres,
the Western and the sci-fi.
But it seems to really just borrow from both enough to identify what each one is, rather than like really giving anything to either genre.
Yeah, it didn't present anything new for either genre. And there were some things that felt like a little dumbed down, like we were talking about right after the movie was like the aspect of why the aliens were there. Like that just seemed so simplified and so dumbed down that it didn't even really need to be there.
Yeah.
Like there could be no reason at all why the aliens were there.
Yeah, and that's kind of what I prefer. I mean, like we talked about Independence Day a little bit, and like how, like the motives of the aliens are basically like with one. It seems like the screenwriter just like wrote himself into a corner and just realized, oh shit, I have to explain this, and he just basically does it in like one line.
Yeah.
You know, he just says, oh, Bill Pullman walks up to the glass or whatever, touches the alien, and then knows all of the alien's history. He knows like everything, and then he tells the rest of the characters, and it's like problem solved. Okay, let's move on.
Yeah.
And that kind of happens here too. There's a scene where, you know, they're talking about it, and then Daniel Craig kind of has this like hypnosis-induced flashback or like
from the
hallucinogen
peyote.
From peyote, and that's still a more effective way of doing it. But it's like wow, really? And then the aliens being there for gold, which is I think a really clever thing. If they were to develop that more, it would have been more interesting than just kind of put it out there and then just like, okay, they're here for gold, let's move on. You don't really understand why, what the
what do they need the gold for? Like they never explained that.
And I almost would have liked it to have been like a Gold Rush movie where, you know, it was like all of the you know Gold Rush guys like panning for gold, and then like some aliens in there too, like maybe more like a District 9 situation where they're all in the same boat. But here it's like they're not really fighting over the gold per se. It's just like they want gold, they're here, and they happen to cross paths. It just seems an awful lot like they just took two distinctly different movies and just went like this.
Yeah.
For really no apparent reason, no benefit to either side of the story. Because I could see the Western part, I could actually see that being a movie on its own, being really interesting if it was to take itself super seriously and get into those characters in that world that they live in. I could also see the alien side of it being really interesting in its own, you know, capacity. But together, it's like not really sure why. I don't know. I mean, we're overthinking this clearly, like to a point where it's just like it's Cowboys and Aliens, but
it was kind of like a watered down version of both genres a little bit. Let's maybe talk a little bit more about the characters then, because there was one character that really bothered me through the whole movie, and that was the female lead.
Yeah.
Ellen, I think like her character's name was.
Sounds right.
Yeah. That made no sense to me whatsoever. Like she was really interesting up to the point where she died. You know, because she seemed like she might be like a good lead character because she was like, oh, I just want to get my people back. And then you find out like, well, her people are all dead, and she's actually an alien herself. The way they reveal it, I thought was it was maybe a little pandering. It just seemed really like it didn't make a lot of sense, and that it was just kind of in there just so they could find a way to resolve things at the end. But like she dies, and then like Daniel Craig like is carrying her across the desert like after they have this fight with the alien, and then like she dies, and then like that's when the Indians come, and then the Indians like take her body and throw it on the fire, and then all of a sudden she like resurrects like she's some kind of phoenix or something, or some kind of mystical spiritual being. And at first, like when it first started happening, I thought that's the route they were going to go with it, that like there was some kind of spiritual mystical thing or supernatural thing that was happening,
Right.
and that's not what it was at all.
No, it was far shallower than that. It was a really abrupt thing. It was really laughable to me, actually. Like,
Yeah.
It was just like, wow, really? Why all of a sudden is this? I mean, because up until that point, there's enough mystery in the movie that you're not really sure what's going on, and it's holding your interest. And then they just straight ruin all that, like in the
Yeah.
one fell swoop. You know, there's something going on with that character from the very beginning because she's very suspicious around the Daniel Craig character. And so you're always kind of like, oh, I wonder what's going to become of this situation, and you never in a million years suspect that. And I think it was an attempt to like kind of surprise you and be like, oh, and then maybe draw you in a little bit, or maybe just a really flippant screenwriting problem. Like they're just like, oh, let's just leave that in there. Like it does what it's supposed to do. Let's just leave it.
At the part like where she ends up sacrificing herself to blow up everything, like, I was really glad that they didn't do the cliche thing where like she somehow miraculously survives and then ends up with Daniel Craig at the end. Like I was very happy they didn't do that.
Yeah, me too. They gave me that little bit. Like they didn't, like so many times in the movie like that. When we were even talking before the movie about how endings are like so like can be so bad.
Yeah.
And like that was like if they did anything right, they did the ending right, as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah.
It was just a little sappy, that moment with Harrison Ford looking like all clean shaven and like super soggy. It was a little sappy. There were some really, really sappy moments, but still kind of heartfelt in a way, you know, still kind of like a very good natured sappiness. And it didn't rob me of my awareness. Like it didn't take me out of, what am I trying to say? Like it didn't assume too much of me.
No.
You know what I mean?
No.
Like it didn't say, oh, we know you're a movie audience, and here's what you really want at the end, is for the two characters to be together. It's like, because I didn't really care. I didn't really care if they were together anyway. It was, I might as well just see Daniel Craig move on, and like, maybe, you know, maybe that's a little presumptuous that there'll be a sequel or something, I don't know, but I doubt it. I really doubt it. I think this is a one-off, if there ever was one. And
that would be fine too. I would be happy with that, actually. Actually, I think a sequel would probably ruin this movie more for me.
Exactly. It would steal the novelty away.
There was one thing that they didn't show in the trailer that was in the movie that kind of, I knew it was going to be in the movie, but I was always wondering, like, why didn't they show this in the trailer? And that was the Indians. I thought, like, their presence in the movie, like, actually made the movie a little smarter. The way that the Native Americans are done, like, they're not done in, like, this really cliche way, they're not done in like a stereotype or anything like that. They're like kind of more like they're just there and that's the way things are. They didn't seem dumbed down really to me. They weren't in there, I don't think they were in the movie enough to be dumbed down.
Right.
I really kind of enjoyed that presence, and then seeing them in the big fight at the end, and that the way that they were, the tactics they were using to fight, I thought was pretty smart actually, and it actually seemed a lot like a traditional Western, you know, the way that they were fighting.
Yeah. I think that's something that they could have played up a lot more. Like I think they could have like really amped up that. I mean, because you're right. It's one of my favorite parts of the movie is the battle scene where the Indians are running around with just like their hatchets and their knives and their spears and their arrows and shit. It's maybe stereotypical to a point, but it's not disrespectful in any way. Not any more stereotypical than it is of the Cowboys to have like guns and be shooting them. You know, I think the Indians were a much more interesting presence than just about any of the other characters, because the other characters had all this baggage, and you never really go into, except for the one, you know, adopted kind of Native American that follows Harrison Ford around as his servant or whatever. You never really get into their heads too much, except to know that they're clearly way smarter than any of the white people are.
Yeah.
You know, and like, you know that because they're reunited with their loved ones at the end, that a lot of them have been taken away, and so they're all kind of on the same page. They're all like going for the same thing, which is kind of neat to see too. I think the thing that bothered me a little bit was the fact that like the movie meandered so much with them just kind of out in like the desert, you know, like there was not much of a narrative like structure to it. It's like this happens and this happens and this happens, and they kind of just like accumulate people along the way, and you never really spend too much time. Like you spend so much time being introduced to kind of like these auxiliary characters that you never really get to know any of the characters you're supposed to care about. So it just seemed a little weak on that front to me. But by the end you know that you're going to have like this big battle. It's pretty clear that there's going to be a big war at the end, and it's not nearly enough people to
take down all those aliens.
Yeah, to take down all those aliens, but at the same time, it's like you're not really sure how many aliens there are either. But it's just like I don't know. It seems like it should have either been like a Braveheart situation, or like just a few of them like fighting the aliens. You know, it's like overcoming insurmountable odds.
To wrap everything up, maybe would you recommend this movie to people?
Oh, I would only recommend it to certain people that I know, honestly. Like, I wouldn't say to everyone go out and see it, because like I just posted on Facebook like I really liked Cowboys and Aliens. It had Cowboys and Aliens in it. That's all I wanted. That's all I expected. And I had like a slew of people just be like, that looked so bad. I don't know why you would go see that. And I'm like, okay, well then don't go see it. You know, like but I mean, a lot of people. I mean, I knew that like you having expressed an interest would probably have some element, like amount of appreciation for it.
Well, you know, I love B movies.
Yeah, but when it wasn't even really a B movie, but like, so yes, I can't say that I would recommend it to everybody, but if you are willing to go and just completely suspend your disbelief for 2 hours and enjoy the performances, which are all pretty good, and enjoy the effects, which are pretty good. The aliens are cool. I mean, they're like some of the more interesting like on-screen alien manifestations that I've seen.
The part where the hands came out of the chest, that was pretty cool too.
There are some interesting things with the characters that you just kind of have to like maybe spend a little time thinking about afterwards if it's worth it to you, but it's worth $6 for sure.
Yeah, it's definitely worth $6. I mean, I don't know if I would go and see this movie in 3D. You know, spend the money for the 3D. I'm kind of glad we didn't. But yeah, I would recommend this movie as like a popcorn movie, and like it was kind of like the thing like when we came out of the theater and I was comparing it to other blockbusters, you know.
Yeah.
Like pretty much every blockbuster I compare to Independence Day, because for me Independence Day is like the bottom of the barrel, but at the same time I went and saw Independence Day like when it came out. Right.
I think I saw it 3 times in the theater.
Yeah, and like I enjoyed seeing Independence Day.
Yeah.
But like the more and more you think about the movie, the more and more this movie, you know, Independence Day like devolves into like this piece of crap. And so like I would put Cowboys and Aliens like above Independence Day.
Oh yeah, it surpasses that kind of thing. It surpasses any Michael Bay or Roland Emmerich thing in every way imaginable, for sure. I mean, it's got its problems, but if you hate, you know, Michael Bay movies, then this will be a nice step up as far as like the summer blockbuster goes, because it's intelligent and aware of itself enough.
Yeah.
It takes itself maybe a little too seriously, but it's still, you know, it's got a lot of things going for it.
If you like big sci-fi or action, or even if you like westerns, like I would probably still recommend this, because it has that same western theme. Like you could take the aliens and like put in just about anybody else, and have that part like of them just fighting for gold, like, and it would still work, I think.
Right.
And so like as a western, I think it works. As sci-fi, I don't know if it's as good, because I like my sci-fi to be really smart, and it was nowhere near as smart as like District 9.
Right.
Or anything like that. So as for like, if you're like a sci-fi lover, I'd say it's not so great. But as a western, like I put it up pretty high for a western, actually.
Yeah, I mean, if you're like a hardcore western fan, then you'll probably have some real issues with it.
Yeah.
It's not that kind of movie, but it is like to the point where they basically, you know, you'll be able to identify the sources where things come from. Yeah. Short of having like concentrated acid for blood or something like that, the aliens are pretty recognizable too, but like still unique and interesting enough that, you know, they're fun to watch. So.
Okay.
That's it.
So that's our review. Thanks for watching.
Bye.